The whole reason for having this reunion is this talk. Basically, as I mentioned earlier, Les said, I'm not getting any help from anybody to preserve and kind of continue this legacy thing, the Y3K project, so that all the data that we have is available 1,000 years from now. So we talked, and we think there are systems and organizations that can be built that will make sure that the data can be available 1,000 years from now.
Okay, we make the point that SAIL's been operating in a digital environment for more than 45 years. All of the early records have been lost because of problems of recording and preserving them. I'll get into that a little bit. But since 1972, we have been archiving. Librarians have advocated that everything go onto paper because that can be preserved. It can last for centuries. But it's not very accessible compared with websites, for example, and it still is subject to fire, earthquake, war, voracious bugs, and if you make multiple copies, which is what you would need to make that work, then it gets very expensive. Current digital recording problems, we mostly use magnetic recording, which is good for maybe a decade, and it starts going bad. Evolving software causes file formats to change over time, so if you've got an old file, you don't have any way of reading it or doing anything with it. Evolving hardware keeps changing, which further complicates it. Therefore, older records generally cannot be read. Why bother? We think that SAIL research deserves to be preserved. There's a lot of good stuff. I won't go into all of this. Most of you know what was going on there, all this stuff. There were a number of technology firsts. Display-based time-sharing system was the first anywhere in the world, I believe. Thor, which became Zeus. Putting bitmap displays on everyone's desk, we were, I think, the first in the world. Computer-aided design system you just heard about, which was a great leap forward that influenced a lot of companies. Spelling corrector that you heard about. Computer-controlled vending machine that allowed you to buy on credit. And if you were a gambler, you could go double or nothing. I noticed there was a cultural difference. The musicians were mostly gamblers and the other people were not. The document compiler, you've heard about Pub and Tech, which was very good at math. Social networking, you heard a little bit about. The finger, that was an accident. Corporate spin-offs, there was a little company called Microsoft. Now that's a kind of indirect spin-off. Dick Gruen, who was here, is he? Oh, okay, he and Steve Russell, who you heard from a little bit ago, and Bill Weir all migrated up to Seattle to run a time-sharing service using a DEC 10. And they also carried on the tradition that we had at SAIL of allowing bright high school students into play. And two of those were Billy Gates and Paul Allen. That was how they got introduced to computing, and it somehow put them into a profitable career. Let's see, when PARC was formed, a bunch of people migrated there. Alan Kay, Dan Swinehart, Larry Tesler, I don't know, there was others probably. And some of the SAIL culture went with them. Desktop publishing systems using laser printers, I stuck my nose into that, helped found Imogen. which was very educational about vulture capitalism. Computer-aided design, Valid Logic used SUDS and some other software they had developed. Computer workstations, Sun Microsystems was a very direct spin-off. They had developed the original Sun workstations at sale. What's they?
Using SUDS.
Using SUDS, true. Internet routers. Cisco I list as a spin-off. It was actually more of a rip-off. That is, they swiped all the technology that they needed without a license. Eventually, Stanford gave them a sweetheart deal.
Are you going to write the book you promised?
Someday. I have to make enough on the book to hire lawyers to right. Music synthesizers, you heard about John Chowning's invention that made quite a nice bundle. And you've also heard a bit about public key cryptography, which led to the formation of RSA. And then you've heard a little bit about the Sailed Art Archive, done principally by Bruce Baumgart. Turing Awards. They are generally recognized as the Nobel Prizes for computing, and since 1966 they've been awarded annually. Of the recipients, 1/3 had ties to SAIL. That's quite extraordinary. There's nobody else anywhere near that, either a group or a university. I have a personal interest in archiving. I have family genealogies going back about 5 centuries, although they're kind of sexist. They follow family names, which means the male line. They don't tell us about the women going back, which is kind of silly because you generally know who your mother is. You can't really be quite sure who your father was. So I'm going to extend that in a different direction. I have diaries of my mother, who lived quite a rich life. She became a very popular stage actress as a teenager, was invited to Hollywood, decided instead to become a school teacher and raise 2 kids while getting a PhD in her spare time. And then she became a college professor and head of her department. And she wrote diaries her whole life. May do something with those. I have family photos going back 150 years, home movies going back 75 years, stories I've written that my children and grandchildren seem to enjoy. My great-grandchildren are now reading. I'm hoping that I can hand them off to my great-grandchildren, who with a bit of luck will start appearing in 15 or 20 years. I don't know how many of them there will be. There's currently no practical way of preserving this stuff, but I think it can be done. Archiving isn't easy. The early storage was all punched paper, tape, and cards. And one of the things I did early on to make this spelling checker when I was at MIT in 1961 was to punch in the 10,000 most common English words on paper tape, and there it is, 7 reels. I still have it.
We can still read it.
I think so. Anyway, I brought that here when I came, and we used it to do the first spelling checker, and then Ralph, I think, expanded it some, adding some words for the better one that he did. However, if you use punch paper tape or cards and reread them a lot, they wear out. So whereas they can be good long-term archiving schemes, you can't use them all that much. Magnetic tape or floppy disks didn't last long. Here's a picture of the deck tapes that we first started out using on the PDP-6, which are small magnetic tape drives. Archiving at that time was an individual responsibility, and therefore we have no archives.